Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's sessions of webinar, which is co-organized by ICAS and Mercer. So my name is Jai, and I am head of the business development of ICAS. And together with me, we honor to have Catherine, our speaker. So Catherine, I remember that you joined ICAS in like 2014, quite like long time ago. And your experience, like I can recall, like you have a big range of different topic for the corporate, for the company, in various topic, like for mental well-being or the mental health topic, and also the other skill for the employees. And thank you for your time to join us today. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the topic today, menopause. I think it's quite interesting, like for us, for our ladies, beautiful ladies today in the sections. So menopause, today the topic we talk about the body and the brain. It's quite interesting to see, like, okay, how it feel like, what is changing on the mental or the physical, and also like very important factors about like psychosocial, how it impact and how it change us. And I really hope that we can have very respectful response, how we choose the best way for ourselves and the others. So I'm really excited to join today and listen to your sharing, Catherine. And okay, the stage is yours.
Thank you so much, and a very warm welcome to everybody joining today. And beautifully said, it's all about the menopause. It's all about us wonderful women, wonderful people, but going through a very unusual and a very defined period of our lives as well. And a big part, a big message of what we are trying to highlight today is that menopause is completely normal. It is a very natural stage of a person's life. But it can also bring a lot of discomforts, and there are a lot of those psychosocial elements where people don't always understand. They don't always recognize that menopause is actually very real, and it does have a lot of potentially very quite challenging physical components. Try, as you mentioned, those brain components as well. So today's session is for us to try to create a bit more comfort, try to create a bit more openness, and really try to let ourselves know that we're not doing anything wrong, but this is the next period of life that we are going through. So to give us a little bit of direction, we're going to understand, okay, what is menopause? How does it look? How does it show up in our bodies, in our emotions, in our relationships? We absolutely then have to talk about menopause and mental health, because the two shake hands very well. And a big component of menopause is that cultural and that psychosocial side as well. And we're gonna go into a little bit more detail about why understanding those elements are so important, because it's not just the physical, there's a lot of other influencing factors. And then we're going to talk about how do we be a bit more mindful about supporting people that are going through this life stage. How do we be respectful to ourselves? How do we look after ourselves? And of course, how do we manage and navigate this period, the menopause, from an organizational perspective as well? Because we really are wanting to help and support people. And the menopause is definitely a process that people do go through as well. My other encouragement for today is please become part of today's session. Today is all about stories. It's all about your stories. It's about normalizing us, sharing with each other, asking questions, getting that support, validating each other. So let's even start doing that now. So if you'd like to pop into the chat box to ask a question, or you can use the Q&A function as well. You can also message any of the hosts and panelists directly if you prefer just to have a little bit more anonymity as well. So that's absolutely fine. We won't read out names if you prefer a little bit more of that privacy. Beautiful. Okay. So let's get into it. And the first space that I'd like to introduce you to is this particular video. It's not a long video, but it really tries to capture, I think, perhaps a lot of the essence of maybe what people go through, what women go through during the menopause. Do have to put in a little bit of a warning. There is a little bit of a naughty word. It is bleeped out of the video, but my apologies to everyone. But the video itself is just such a lovely video. Again, there is a little bit of that naughty word at the end. We don't hear it. It is bleeped out, but I just wanted to give a little disclaimer. But please give the video a chance. It really does present a beautiful and important message. Okay, I'm going to switch my camera off, so you just need to focus on the video itself. I'll see you in the next 2 minutes. Enjoy.
Once you have navigated, some people think the menopause only affects you physically, but that's not the whole story. It can also affect your emotions and your thinking. So emotionally, you could have mood swings all over the place. Perhaps before you were anxious about giving presentations, now you're having a panic attack over it. Maybe before you were mildly annoyed when he didn't do the washing up, now you get incandescent with rage, and it shows. Or feeling down when a friend stands you up before you brush it off, and now you're just plunged into despair, hopelessness, completely despondent. It's good to tell the people around you about this so they don't take it too personally. Now, your brain also goes, I'm sorry to say, like, I can't remember stuff anymore. Once it gets over 3 things, that's it, got to write a list. Or I'll say the wrong word, and I won't even realise I've said the wrong word. Or it can be harder to concentrate on things or to think clearly. And again, I think it's important to let our colleagues at work and the people we live with know. At work, you don't want them counting it as performance or capability. They need to know that it's due to an underlying health condition, the menopause, and then it doesn't count. And we need to pull in those favours and get some adjustments made. The good news is, once you have navigated these rather choppy waters of menopause, there's some good water at the end of it. You're just your own woman, you don't give a f*** anymore, you're not putting everyone else first, you're doing what's good for you. Menopause, I think, is the body's kick up the backside going, you've got to look after yourself, eat healthily, drink properly, sleep well, and do what's good for you. There's loads of information on the NHS Inform website and at the Menopause Cafe charity website, which is where you can meet up with other people going through the menopause. It's important to know you're not alone, you're not going mad. Connect up with other people going through the menopause, share your stories, and you'll feel better.
Okay, so really important message. You're not going mad. You're not alone. Share your story. And I think that really captures the essence of what we're trying to provide in talking about menopause, sharing stories about menopause. That yes, there are some very real challenges and changes that it can bring. You know, the concentration, our moods tend to be all over the place a little bit more. But that certainly is part of our bodies physiologically going through change as well. And if we can let people know, and if those people can understand how to support us, then we can transition through these periods a lot more comfortably and with a lot more care. So let's have a brief overview of what really the menopause is about. Now, we're not going to go into the biological symptoms and changes too deeply because we're more focused on the relationships and the culture and the psychosocial. But really, as a fundamental message, again, the menopause is a natural biological process and therefore a completely normal part of life. The symptoms from the menopause, with all the hormonal changes, our adrenal systems are changing. There's a lot of physiological changes that the body goes through. A lot of those symptoms can be experienced as very disruptive and indeed very challenging as well. And physiologically, what the menopause is about is that it really is the end of the menstrual cycle. So the menopause is when we haven't had a period for the past 12 months. And it can start roughly around the age of anywhere between 40 to 55. However, there definitely are cases of people starting menopause earlier. So of course, remember, everyone's bodies are different, but this is something that the body does go through. Perimenopause is the symptoms before our periods have stopped. So the periods might still be coming, they might be a little bit more sporadic, there might be some changes there, but it's the period before we start to really end off the experience of periods. And post-menopause is once the menopause has finally stopped and we go to what the lady in the video was saying, the beautiful phase of now post-menopausal processes. Okay. So let's have a little bit of a look at what are some of the symptoms. What are some of the, and maybe let's not call them symptoms. Let's call them elements or factors or experiences. Now, as you can see from the image in front of you, these are a lot of the physical changes. So a lot of hot flashes, our body's temperature is trying to regulate, it's trying to find its sweet spot and its sweet rhythm. Our libido could go down, we get night sweats. Frequency of periods tend to change, so the regularity may not be anymore. The intensity of periods may change as well. We may also get insomnia, we're struggling to sleep, our weight may be affected. A big one that people tend to experience is brain fog. So just your concentration is off, you can't really focus, the memory is out the door, low energy levels, I think is quite a big thing, and mood changes. Remember, really what the menopause is about is a lot of different hormonal changes. It's preparing the body to go into a different part of the normal developmental process. So the body is now trying to adjust to all these quite important changes that the body is going through. But let me not limit any of your experiences. If you would like to share, maybe you've experienced other symptoms, or other behaviors, or other factors yourself, or you've observed some different qualities in other people, please do share that in the chat box. What has been your experience of menopause, whether it is pre-menopause, whether it is perimenopause or post-menopause. If you'd like to share any of those behaviors and qualities and experiences, please do so. A couple of more elements, perhaps just to highlight, is that there might be, as I mentioned, that reduced libido. Our skin can start changing. It becomes a bit drier and a little bit itchy. Not only do we lose weight or gain weight, but also our body shapes may change as well. So clothes don't fit us how they used to fit us. So maybe there's got to be some changes in the style of clothes that we generally wear. There may even be a lot of aches and pains, maybe pains in our joints as well. Headaches and migraines are often quite a common feature. Heart palpitations, again, remember, a lot of hormonal changes are happening. Again, as I mentioned, problems with memory or concentration, but also there might be some type of vaginal dryness. And this is important because if we are in a relationship with somebody, then it might also impact on our sex life as well. And I know that it might be a bit unusual to hear these things being said, but this is very much part of a very normal process that happens during the menopause. I know that it can create a lot of discomfort, a lot of pain even, and therefore it is something that we do need to get that support. There is support, there is a way of trying to help and smooth some of these experiences a little bit better. So also because there might be a lot of changes to our physical body, there may also be an increase in the experience of UTIs, urinary tract infections as well. So again, a big important reminder to when we are going through these transitional periods, pay attention to your body, pay attention to the changes. If anything is painful or itching or uncomfortable, connect with your health practitioner and get that support. Now, it is important to note that these physical symptoms don't just come out of nowhere. Again, this is very much connected to the physiological changes that our bodies are going through. So our hormones are starting to rebalance. Our estrogen levels drop, and that has quite a domino effect on a number of other processes. So because our hormones are in charge of a lot of systems in our body, particularly with our mood, it really is not a surprise that our mood can be impacted. So there's a direct link between our physical health and our mental health. So because of all these hormonal changes, it is going to have an impact on our mood. Now that may be further influenced by a number of other elements. And really what that can result in is quite a formidable impact on our mental health. Depression might increase. As you can see from some of the stats in front of you, 80% of women have struggles in communication with their partners. 9 in 10 women going through menopause also experience mental health issues as well. So it is an incredibly common experience to go through some kind of mental health challenge. But unfortunately, what we're also seeing is that we're not always seeking out for help and support. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. Often when it comes to mental health, we don't always reach out for help and support, but when it's combined with menopause, whether it's perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause, we're not reaching out for help and support. And so again, a very big reminder, share your story, connect with someone, what your body is going through, completely normal, but it can also be very disruptive to our own well-being, our relationship with ourselves, our relationship with other people as well. So let's talk a little bit about what are some of these influencing factors. It isn't just a physical change. There are a lot of other things that make those physical changes uncomfortable for other people to hear about. Menopause is almost seen as a bad or a dirty thing that we can't talk about, women's issues. It's a people's experience because, women interact and relate to everybody else. So we need to have a look at what are the cultural influences. What does society do that impacts on how we experience the menopause? And here it's really important to understand what does age, fertility, role, and identity play in terms of how women are seen. So generally speaking, and here I'm mostly going to talk about in a Western culture, Now, in many Western cultures, a younger age is prioritized. People that are fertile are prioritized. And having a role as a mother, a parent, is prioritized. And this forms a massive part of a woman's identity. So what does this mean? It means that if you're not young, that's not a good thing. If you're not fertile, then that's not a good thing. If you're no longer a mother, then that's not a good thing. So we often associate a woman being someone who's young, fertile, and a nurturing parent. Now, of course, this is not such a healthy way of just singularly viewing women. You know, of course, there are young people, but they're all different types of ages for everyone. There are people who are fertile, who are not fertile, and that doesn't mean that we cannot be nurturing, but maybe we also choose to either not have children, or maybe our children have left the home, which is often the case in a menopause period of our lives. So because we value youth, we value fertility, we value the role as a nurturing mother. So anything that isn't that, unattractive, it's forgotten, it loses the sense of value. And that, of course, then means that when people go through the menopause, they are seen as other. They are seen as not good enough. They are invalidated completely and dismissed. So, for instance, when we get hot flushes or our moods are up and down, there's those sometimes not so nice comments of, oh, she's going through her woman thing. Or it's just, she's being silly, or she's being sensitive. You know, all those not such nice comments that is really referencing what can be a very challenging time in a person's life. And what's important to note is that this does not happen in all cultural practices. It does not happen in all communities. Many communities around the world, for example, in Japan, in New Zealand, even in Canada and India, and we're just naming some. These are just one or two of the many examples around the world. That actually the menopause actually represents leadership. It's a time where people actually transition into becoming spiritual elders. They see it as a very beneficial, natural stage of life where you get a little bit more privilege, you get a little bit more respect. You know, people look up to you because you now have wisdom, you've had a life. And actually, a lot of people look forward to it. In a lot of communities around the world, they don't always experience the same physiological challenges the way maybe some communities in the Western culture do. So even though a lot of the physiological changes are the same, they don't experience them as bad. Isn't that interesting? So physically the same, but the experiences are different. And what we're suggesting, it's because a lot of communities around the world don't vilify menopause. They celebrate menopause. They look at menopause as almost a rite of passage. You're coming into a space with wisdom. You know, you've done your dues. You've had this life. You can take a break from raising your children. Other people can learn from you. It's this beautiful transitional period of celebration. It's in Japan, it is actually seen as a space of rejuvenation, almost starting a new chapter. So a lot of communities around the world look at menopause, experience menopause differently. Therefore, the people going through the menopause, they themselves can experience it differently, even though the physical elements are the same or similar. Then we also need to look at, We need to learn from other cultural practices. We need to shift how we understand the menopause. But let's look at sometimes what we do go through in certain communities. And so understanding how women, how people going through menopause relate to their bodies in public. You know, women often feel, and I've often heard comments that people feel like, I'm no longer in charge of my body. My body just starts to do things without me giving it permission to do it. People often feel like my body is failing me. I don't want to get the hot flushes. My memory used to be beautiful. My thinking used to be spot on. You know, in the workplace, I used to be quick and on the ball, and, you know, I could, you know, keep my diary and schedule in my mind, no problem. And so our relationship with our bodies in a public arena, where now other people are watching, other people are now witnessing that our bodies are not quite working the way we want them to. But again, if we see menopause as something normal and natural, then we start to change the meaning of getting a hot flush. Then a hot flush is more of a, oh, wonderful, you're becoming a spiritual elder or a wise one in our community. We should celebrate. We should acknowledge this rite of passage. Something to think about. It might still make the hot flush a bit uncomfortable, but then at least we've maybe have a bit more support. For example, there might be a couple of more fans or some cold water or a little bit of a breeze with windows open, so we can navigate these changes a little bit more. Another big part of understanding menopause is that because it is that shift in transition, that we are going through a different period of our lives, our relationships with other people change. You know, the kids have maybe left home, or our work is changing. We don't have to look after other people really in the same way anymore. And that has a big effect on our identity. Who are we? Now, again, remember, if our community only sees value in us because we're a mother, we're young, or we're attractive, what happens if we don't have those features anymore because we are slightly older, so we have the wrinkles? But if my community doesn't value and celebrate the wrinkles as privilege, then who am I? How do I feel good about myself? And so we need to acknowledge how people see growing older, changing our role as a woman. A woman can be anything. They can take on any role. They're not just their womb or their fertility. A big part of these changes is also our relationships, our intimate relationships, so the physical side, but not just the physical side. It's also, again, if a woman feels like her body is betraying her, as opposed to celebrating this new period of her life, then we're not going to feel attractive. We're not going to feel confident. We're going to be a little bit more self-aware and have that discomfort. But also, physically, our bodies are going to be reacting differently. You know, so we might need to introduce other elements to help the physical component of intimacy be a little bit smoother as well. There's no shame in it. There's no embarrassment. This is just the transition, the celebration of a new start of our life. This is what our bodies are doing. So what we also need to recognize as we do come to the end of our session, because we're also going to have some time over for some Q&A. But in the workplace, unfortunately, what's happening really because of the menopause is that a lot of women in power making wonderful decisions, who are excellent in their work, are leaving earlier. They're retiring a little bit earlier because of all these different changes, because of often how people are responding to them, the discrimination, the stigma, the false perceptions. As the lady was saying in the video, you know, the brain fog is very real. It does happen. And it should not be seen as a part of our work performance. and assessment. And really, that particular age group, the 40s to the 55s is an increasingly growing part in our economy. So an important part of our global economy. We need to value the richness that people going through menopause bring to the workplace, their wisdom, their experience. And we need to acknowledge that this is a very real and normal part of people's lives. So what can we do? We need to increase our awareness. Let's educate people. Let's tell people, a little bit more so that they can understand there's nothing wrong. This is a normal part, but we do need to think about the very real changes that are happening. We also need to think about our physiological spaces. Our bodies are changing physically, so our environmental spaces, they also need to be adaptive, to cater for the hot flushes, maybe to help us with a little bit of the fog, to help us with a little bit of our nutritional intake as well. And certainly we need to be a little bit more mindful of looking after our mental health. From a social perspective, let's challenge those misconceptions that youth is the only good thing. Age is wisdom. It's a life full of richness. Wrinkles are beautiful. Gray hair is the new trend. And things are definitely changing. Things are definitely shifting. But it's about how can we try to shift the story to really start to celebrate the menopause as a rite of passage, as a period in life that is worth celebrating. From the gray hair to the wrinkles to our bodies changing, even celebrating the hot flushes. How can we make the hot flushes a little bit easier? How can we navigate those mood swings a little bit more? So this is about really engaging with people with empathy, understanding what the menopause is actually about, and looking at and really being very mindful of, how do we define woman? What does it mean to be a woman? At work, and here I greatly encourage you to take a screenshot of this particular page, because here, what a really important part is, well, number one, let's prioritize just our well-being. Because when we say that someone's well-being is front and center, their physical health is part of that, their mental health is part of that, and the menopause is a very normal and expected part of somebody's physical and mental health process. So normal, it's a part of life that is most likely going to happen. So this is about how can we educate ourselves in an organization? How can we have open and honest conversations? Do we have a menopause policy that really tries to understand and navigate how do we support that valued part of the workforce so that we don't lose that talent? How do we support people going through the menopause? This is about building relationships with people, building our knowledge about people. So, it goes even one step back that the menopause is just one example of how do we accept and respect people and not discriminate and stigmatize against other people. We also need to never make an assumption, even though all the symptoms and behaviors and elements that I am sharing today are very common, you and your story might be completely different. So never make an assumption, rather find out what is this person's experience, or what is my particular experience that is different from other people? What do I need? What does this person need? And this is why it's important to connect, to collaborate, and to make appropriate adjustments where necessary. Of course, we cannot make accommodations perfectly for every single person, but this is about what can we do to really support all the members of our workforce. And then, of course, there is some very fundamental basics that we can do about the physical environment, that risk management. Manage the ventilation, manage the temperature, think about the clothing that people are needing or have to wear. Think about the access to the toilet or spaces that maybe people need to make their physiological well-being at work, looked after. So again, we really are encouraging us to reach out, to connect with other people, share your story. And part of that is connecting with the EAP. And of course, ICAS is part of that EAP process. It is the EAP process. And as you can see here in front of you, there are many different components of ICAS that can help you in your particular journey. So please connect with us. We are here to help and support you, to hear your story, to give you information. And I hope everyone, you have enjoyed and connected with even just one message from today's session. I don't see any other questions or comments. So I'm going to connect and hand back over to you just in case I have missed anything during the session.
Thank you, Catherine. I think it's quite interesting and quite useful for myself, and I believe that on the attendees today, we have like good messages from you, good recommendations, and also how we can support the others and how the organizations can support women in their corporate is quite important. So I really appreciate your time, and let our audience have a couple of minutes if they have any questions related to menopause or any differences or any thoughts. Because the good message I got from you for today is don't be sad. No burnout. It's very normal. It's a very normal period time of life. And share your story. So, it's just not something wrong. It's just very normal. And that's why ICAS and Mercer here, we would like to be in a part of your story. Let's talk about it, let's share together. And we can, like women together, we make the strain, the connection to hear the story of each one. So I can see that maybe the topic is quite sensitive and not really a lot of questions. However, we can see one very interesting question for you. So can you share the differences between the Western and Eastern culture about menopause? Wow, it's very, very hard questions. What do you think, Catherine?
So I actually think it's a really, really lovely question, because I also don't want to group all Eastern cultures, because there are, so many different communities. But the one story that I certainly thought was just really beautiful was, for example, the story from Japan, and I'm not going to go into a lot, but it's a really beautiful example, because even if you look at the term for menopause in Japan, and my apologies to any Japanese community members, I fear that I'm going to not pronounce this beautiful word correctly, konenki, and really just even how we refer to menopause in Japanese represents a period of renewal and regeneration, and it's representative of this renewal and regeneration over a period of years. There's also a sense of a change of energy or scenery. Whereas the direct translation from English from the menopause is really that the periods have stopped. And I just thought that, gosh, even just that small little difference, just in our language, in our words, I thought was so beautiful. That even just from a word, you can capture the sense that the menopause is a transition of energy and rejuvenation and revival and renewal. And in English, period stopped. So that's one example. In many other communities, for example, there was an example from in India. Again, also a community of women in India. It's a very natural stage that comes with benefits, and it actually comes with a bit of freedom from society's constraints. So they no longer have to adhere to certain rules of society as well. Another example is where and again, my apologies, I'm not going to pronounce this word correctly, chichimilia. And there, actually, what a lot of women experience is that they do not really experience osteoporosis. So often in Western cultures, and in some other cultures as well, often what's associated with menopause, because of the hormonal changes, is that our bone density can be impacted. And amazingly, women in Chichmila, they still go through the physiological changes, but actually osteoporosis is not really something that they experience linked with the menopause. And isn't that absolutely fascinating? So there we are looking at actual, physiological differences as well. So not just the social experiences. That menopause doesn't always have to bring the symptoms that we often associate in a westernized culture. But I'm of course from a westernized culture, but let me hear from you perhaps. Do you have any stories or maybe stories that your grandmother or your mom or other family members that you know have shared with you about what menopause could actually be?
It's lovely to hear from our audience too, but from my side, I can see that from my mom, my grandmother's side, it's not really easy for them to talk about it in front of people, even like with family members. So maybe my culture is quite different with some people, some ladies here. I don't know, but it's very, very hard for them to open their mind and talk freely about it. Maybe the culture expect it quite different for Vietnamese or Asian thing to talk something like quite sensitive, that they are afraid, they feel shy, feel bad, or they're afraid that they admit that they are old, and just like something it cannot be easily accepted by women. So I think quite different on the culture respectively. So I'm lovely. I would like to hear more about the sharing from the audience if you guys want to share about it, because this is, let's talk about it. But however, I see more questions, and maybe like we will try to address the other questions in the meanwhile that we're waiting for the other sharing. So there one question talking about, when we have menopause or in the menopause, so is there any like treatment to minimize the impact or the symptom? Because like it's coming and we want to have a normal life or a better life. So how we can like minimize it, because we know it's coming, but in the term of physical and mental, like how we can do or avoid any risk to our life.
There's absolutely supportive treatments, and so here, and I'm really glad that this question is being asked, and I'm really glad that you're also sharing that your experience was, don't talk about the menopause, we don't, we keep these things very hidden, because that's also been very much my experience as well. You're very hush-hush. It's kind of seen as this, don't talk about it. We don't look, we're going to avoid it. And so asking these questions, I think is such a step forward, because I think we are so used to, keep quiet, just experience this on your own, suffer alone, experience the stigma on your own. So yes, I myself am not a medical doctor. I'm a psychologist, but I do know that there are absolutely supportive treatments and support that one can access just to help take the edge off a lot of the physical symptoms, because we know that the physical symptoms can be incredibly disruptive. Our bodies are all different. They experience these changes differently. So yes, my short answer is yes, there are, but you will need to connect with your GP and maybe even to a specialist in this particular area who has a little bit more knowledge about this particular space as well. And is there one more question, Tra, that we can get to, or are we running out of time a little bit?
We still have time for questions and answer, and I can see like another question for you, Catherine. So, why some women do not have the typical symptoms of menopause?
I think, and also a great question, and I think this is also part of our struggle, is because we don't always get the same symptoms. What menopause looks like for me may not look like the same for somebody else. And that can also be really confusing as well. And it can be confusing for other people, like, oh, but, Sally down the road, she didn't get these symptoms. Why are you getting these symptoms? Or even at work. And the thing is, our physical bodies are different. When we experienced our periods, those were different, so on every level, our bodies are going to react differently. Our hormone levels are going to be different. Our other biological processes are going to be different. So it's just the same in the menopause. And also to say all the symptoms, the behaviors, the experiences I named, we don't have to experience all of them. People can go through the menopause, not experience a hot flush. That's just how their body is adapting to the changes in the hormones. So a very, very normal part to have these differences in symptoms as well. I'm going to be quite cheeky, Try, because I do see some, although I'm very excited to see a question from a man, from a male. Yeah. Yay. Because this is what we're trying to encourage. It's about people, so well done. Thank you. And the question is, does women still need pap tests and mammograms after menopause? Yeah. Great question. And it's a great question because we're asking questions about our health. We're invested. There's action. So well done. Lovely. Again, as I'm not a medical doctor, I do need to be mindful of not giving out any kind of medical advice. And what I would encourage is speak to your healthcare practitioner. Again, everyone's bodies are different. They all react differently. And when it comes to your physical health, regular checkups, regular check-ins are always important. Look after your body. That's my short and sweet answer. And then I think another question has also come through as well, which I think is a related question. Shall we include a mammo test and annual health checkup for them? You know what? Again, it's beautiful that you're asking the question because it means that you have an awareness, you understand also the health risks. My encouragement is yes. I think we regularly have to check on our breast health. We regularly have to check on the way that our body is functioning because there are slightly two different systems going on. So, breast health, mammograms are very important. Pap smears also very important just to make sure that the general health of the body is there. So I would encourage for that to still happen. But again, I'm not a medical doctor. Rather speak to your GP and get good, proper advice for you.
Yeah. Excuse me, I am medical doctor. I can answer the question. It's okay? Yes, about the mammogram and the pap test still need for the woman in menopause, especially women over 40 years old. Yes, because the risk of cervical cancer or breast cancer still happen. So that's why follow and the description, any check-up test from your GP, general doctor. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Tu, for your in on the answer. So I think I'm not a doctor, but in case like I have opportunity and I have the support from my company to say like, okay, you have the employee benefit, you have the program to check up your health and related to, because you woman, you have this special offer. So I would say yes. So this is my personal idea, thinking about like how we can support together, how we can have the good policy, and also how we can share the story, how we can talk about it easily. And so thank you for all the great questions that raised by you, my lovely audience. Thank you for your time, Catherine. I'm lovely to hear about your sharing, your voice, your comment, recommendation. And we will have more and more sections talking about health for women in this May and the other time in the future, very near future. And please waiting for our like notice about what is the next one. And I believe that you will really happy for our next topic and talking about well-being, about the health. So again, thank you everyone for your time and see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Tra and Caroline. Thank you, everyone. See you next webinar and have a nice day.
You too. Thanks, everyone. Bye.